Video 1, Ambivalence and Hybridity. In this unit, I'll talk about poetry by colonized writers. The issue of post-colonial writing and theory, not to mention history, is extremely well developed and could easily fill up a whole course. In fact, there are universities where you can study a full degree in post-colonial studies. There's so much to read and so much to say. It is especially important that this subject, life during and after being colonized, is extremely diverse. African, Asian, Native American, Caribbean experiences have as much in common as they do have elements that are different between them. Since this is just one unit in a course, I want to focus on one or two aspects of post-colonial writing that I think are especially important to understanding the interface between literature and globalization. So today I will talk about ambivalence and hybridity. I will give a quick introduction, but most of the class will deal with the poem A Far Cry from Africa by the Caribbean poet Derek Walcott. I am basing what I say on work by post-colonial theorists, many of whom are from post-colonial nations, but I summarize and synthesize rather than present one author's ideas or one author's point of view. Ambivalence means being of two minds about something, not being able to decide what you think, feeling two contradicting things at the same time. To give a banal example, would you like some ice cream? I'm ambivalent. On the one hand, I'd love something sweet. On the other hand, I have to watch my weight. So I don't know if I should get some ice cream. Ambivalence is very common in the colonial situation. We saw Western ambivalence with Kipling seeing the native population as half devil, half child, half evil, half as someone that you have to take care of. But for many people under colonialism, especially after direct colonialism is over, there is ambivalence about the colonizers. On the one hand, and I'll use the term on the one hand, on the other hand, a lot here. On the one hand, there are clear exploitation, loss of control and freedom, often severe suffering, all because of things brought by colonialism. However, and I am not saying this to justify it in any way, people under colonialism can feel respect and admiration for the great power that controls them. They may even feel thankful for some of the technologies or ideas or institutions brought by the Europeans. Sometimes by destabilizing older ways of life, Europeans create opportunities that did not exist in earlier regimes. And while some people in the colony may suffer greatly because of colonialism, others might find it as an opportunity. Furthermore, you must remember that colonialism took place over centuries, many generations. People lived their whole lives under this foreign rule. It was the only thing that they knew. It was part of who they were. Education is very important in understanding this. Often the only schools available were run by foreigners or people under colonial influence. They taught a version of a Western curriculum. For example, as part of learning the English that will serve them to find a job, a place in the British-run India, Indians would learn English values, priorities, and literature. They may know Shakespeare better than they know Indian Hindi literature. They became English in a sense. You are ambivalent because the colonial power becomes part of who you are. For many descendants of African slaves, for example, English or French became the only language that they knew because they were torn away from their own culture violently, or the culture was completely destroyed by colonialism. So they can be angry at the English, at the British, but they can only express this anger in English, in the English language. It is part of who they are. It's really hard to just simply hate or try to break away from something that is part of you. You are likely to feel deeply ambivalent. Furthermore, many times post-colonial people may be descendants of both Europeans and people of color. This is very common in societies that were plantation colonies. They thus are mixed in their very bodies and not just in their culture and language. The colonial past being part of who you are leads me to the next term I want to introduce and discuss, hybridity. Hybrid is an adjective that means being made up of two or more different things. Thus, a hybrid car runs both on gas and electricity. Hybridity is the condition of being hybrid. In literary and post-colonial theory, critics often talk about hybrid identities or hybrid culture, or simply talk about hybridity. Hybridity signifies that during and after colonialism, there is no such thing as a pure, authentic culture or identity. All post-colonial cultures are mixtures of the original culture of that region, of that country, from before colonialism, and the colonizer's culture, the European culture. Even if the foreign influence is officially removed and independence is achieved, even if you have political independence, the traces of colonialism remains on the culture, on the people's identities. Furthermore, individual identities are similarly hybrid, not completely native, but never totally Western. They're in between. They're made up of two separate but intermingled components. The colonizing cultures actually are also hybrid because even the Western cultures take in elements from the cultures they colonized. So once this early stage of globalization, which we call colonialism, takes hold, there can be no pure cultures. No, there never were, but colonialism makes it even more highlighted and stressed. I think that oftentimes well-educated people, as writers often are, as poets often are, feel this hybridity and ambivalence very powerfully. This is because on the one hand, again, on the one hand, so much of the education, as I said already, was controlled by Westerners. Furthermore, educated people often appreciate what they studied. They enjoy learning. They wanted to learn what they were taught. On the other hand, they're often very aware of the political situation. Educated people are often more politically aware and of history, the history of colonialism. So they have more knowledge about why they should be resentful about colonialism. People under colonialism and after colonialism, especially writers and intellectuals, contain the ambivalence and hybridity or hybridity within their own personality and personal history. This is an example of how a global phenomenon like colonization is inserted into people's personal lives and identities, describing and analyzing such connections between the personal and the global is where literature can help us understand such large-scale phenomena. It is often difficult to understand large-scale history like colonialism, but a poem, even one poem that you pay close attention to can help us see one person's point of view on this broad phenomena.